What's going on, Hoof listeners? Welcome back to the Hoof Podcast on Thursday night. During this beautiful summer evening. Man, the weather's not, you know what comes with nice weather, though, at our age, like mid-30s?
What's
Projects.
that?
Projects.
Yes. Tell me about it. I
So-
just told you I was painting a little. I got some deck paint I got to do. I've got my yard work. I've got a whole list of things to do
Yes.
outside. But
Yes.
you're right.
My yard's
It's
looking
true.
pretty pristine, but now I got to help the in-laws with their yard. So I was actually doing that before you jumped on. So it's funny you're saying, oh, yeah, running a little behind because of projects, but it's funny because I was kind of doing the same thing. So it's,
That's so good. Yep.
Yep, so-
Gotta love the nice weather, but yeah, it comes with when you're a homeowner. There's a long list of like, oh yeah, I got to get that done, and you're constantly updating it, right? It's never
Yes.
finished.
Yes, yeah, and here in Western New York, I mean, it's 60 degrees a couple days ago. Next week's going to be 90.
Yeah.
So just typical, temperature
Up and
swing
down.
in Western New York, but 90 with the humidity too much for me. I prefer 60, to be honest.
We'll take it. It's a little more relaxing, right? Something good.
All right, so we got mandatory minicamp going on, and it's the typical stuff. Sideline reporters saying, "Oh, KJ Hamler caught a ball, Keon Coleman caught a ball." No real news, I would say. I don't like to buy into things this time of year just because there's no pads, there's no defense, right? They're probably going through the playbook, things like that, putting it on the field a little bit, getting to know each other still. Any thoughts on mandatory minicamp that you wanted to touch on before we get into the content?
It happened. I think the biggest headline for me is Milano putting in a little work. He wasn't full practice or whatever, but the fact that he's out there is meaningful. Yeah, so that is something that I like to see. We talked about it last week a little bit. These mini camps, they're not in pads, they're not full contact or anything. It's basically just, getting in the swing of things and letting the players get used to each other and, beginning of reps and learning the plays and implementing new strategies or whatever. So it's the learning portion, especially for rookies, is good, and for injuries is a big thing, and seeing Milano out there was the highlight for me. Him being able to move a little more, get a little more work in, tells you he's trending in the right direction to come back at least at close to 100% by the time the season rolls around.
Yeah. No, that's huge. And he's definitely part of the content tonight. We're going to go through the top questions surrounding the Buffalo Bills this offseason as we're kind of getting ready for training camp. They have a lot this year, I feel like. Compared to other years, it's been kind of quiet. I feel like this year there's a lot of questions around this roster. Matt Milano being one of them, a lot of turnover, right? Kind of a full off season with the offensive coordinator. So, I mean, that's a big topic, I think, and that kind of impacts a lot of positions as well. So, yeah, we're going to get into those. So we got 10 questions in order of importance. 10 being least important, number 1 being most important when it comes to question marks around this roster. So we can jump into that. First, we do have some NFL news to get to here. Trevor Lawrence gets paid $275 million deal, 5 years. Ties Joe Burrow as the NFL's highest paid player. I think the salary was like $55 million a year. And this is what we've seen in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
It's your turn to get paid, you get paid, right? If you're a quarterback. I mean, there's a little bit of movement based on your play on the field, right? But not a lot, right? I don't know if Trevor Lawrence has really been in the conversation of top quarterback. I think there's been expectation, especially the last 2 years, right? Has he got there? I would say no. I mean, they were in a great position last year to get in the playoffs, right? Going into the season, we thought they had one of the easier schedules being in that division. It was all rookie quarterbacks in that division, right? It was like, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, CJ Stroud. I mean, I know Richardson was a year before.
For 3/4 of the season, they were there, right? They were the number 1 seed still,
right? And unfortunately for Jacksonville, CJ Stroud was really good, right? And they weren't as good of a team as everyone kind of thought. Right. And I think some of that is on Trevor Lawrence. What are your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence getting paid?
Yeah, I mean, the market is the market, Tua. So, I mean, it is what it is, right? He's the next quarterback to get paid. And like it or not, the quarterback has all the leverage when you're a good quarterback, right? And Trevor Lawrence is certainly that, right? You think about where is the team with him? Where would the team be without him, right? And so if you're the GM and the owner, you're just like, let's write this guy a check. That's what it comes down to. Where is the market? That's how much he's due. I would be shocked if Tua didn't get the same deal or maybe a couple mil more, right? Because that's usually, again, how this goes. It's the fact that he ties Joe Burrow instead of passing him, a year or so after Joe Burrow got his deal, tells you that you're not quite as good as Joe Burrow, but we're giving you the same deal instead of more, right? And I think the similar type thing is going to happen in the wide receiver market now that we've seen Justin Jefferson get his huge, unbelievable deal. You got guys like CeeDee Lamb, and then there's others, coming up. I think they'll just get close to that maybe and not quite exceed that. So yeah, to me, it is what it is. It's not shocking at all to me. He's a quarterback. He's going to get his money. Whether or not he's worth it. I mean, you saw Jared Goff get paid this offseason. We've seen quarterbacks get their money, period, full stop. If you want to be a good team, you need a good quarterback. Unless you have a guy who's on a rookie deal, you're paying him a lot of money. So Trevor Lawrence is just the next guy in line to do that. And Tua will be before the start of the season if all goes well for the Dolphins. And same with some of the other players waiting for contracts.
Yeah, and Trevor Lawrence, with a 500 last year, I think he missed a game, and then 9-8 the year before. So basically a 500 football team the last 2 years. His touchdowns in the 20s, but again, you get high turnovers with him. 14 turnovers, 21 touchdowns last year. And really, like you saw him rushing a lot in Clemson. Really hasn't translated to the NFL. I thought he'd be more of a running quarterback. He's certainly mobile in the pocket, and there's a lot to like about Trevor Lawrence, but I mean, I think he kind of had the expectation bug where it was like, he's a clear number one pick overall, right, in the draft in 2020. And, because of the Elite 11, kid's been famous since he was like 16.
Yeah.
So he just had so much hype around him that no matter how good he plays, it's probably still not good enough. You know what I mean? So if he comes out mediocre, it's not good enough for him, right? But I do think the team likes him. The fans like Lawrence, right? There's a lot to like there. I still think there's more expectation for him to grow, as there should be, headed into year 4. But again, you got to put it together, right? And I think they added a couple pieces. Gabe Davis being one of them. I know they had Calvin Ridley, but I think he went to the Titans, right?
Yes.
I thought they added another receiver. Check it out.
Well, they drafted. Oh my gosh, the guy the Bills were targeting, Michael Thomas Jr., right? So that was a big addition for them.
Brian Thomas Jr.
Or Michael Thomas Jr. What am I thinking? Brian Thomas Jr. because they wanted to add another receiver, and that was where it happened right in the first round. So they've definitely added talent at the position for him. You lose Calvin Ridley, that's a big loss when he turned on like he did. But let's remember that Christian Kirk was their guy
right
prior, so he's still there. And yeah, he's got plenty of weapons around him to succeed.
Yeah, he made Zay Jones a good player too,
exactly.
Right? Those guys kind of resurrected their career by playing with Trevor Lawrence. So we'll see how it goes with this group. But again, a lot of expectation. Now you get paid. You're the highest paid player in the NFL with Joe Burrow. That expectation is not going away for him. All right, other news, Falcons lose 2025 draft pick, 5th rounder, and fine $250K for tampering, logistical and administrative violations when talking to Kirk Cousins. Worth it, right? I think they got off real easy on this. I'm not really sure the details, like what exactly went down, but some tampering going on there. If you're going to go get a quarterback, though, I mean, it's low price to pay.
Yeah, this is another one of those slap on the wrist warning situations. You remember there was similar punishments with like the Patriots, for example, when it's your 4th, 5th time getting caught, cheating the system, trying to, go around the rules, then you're going to get a harsher penalty, right? Or if it's a really egregious thing, then you're going to get a harsh penalty. To me, this is kind of the warning of like, this was something you shouldn't have done and you did it, so we're going to punish you. But it's not, where it was league changing all of a sudden, and going to be, I think the Falcons were going to be able to negotiate that deal one way or the other anyway. But the fact that they did it early than they should have, is why there needed to be some kind of repercussion to say, hey, this is the rule, you broke it, you shouldn't do that. Other teams, this is your warning, don't do that just because they got away with it, sort of. So not a huge deal to me. I maybe Minnesota feels differently, but I don't think again, the deal probably would have worked out one way or another. It's just a matter of, and we know everybody knows conversations happen. It's just a matter of where that line is of you did a little
Can't do
more
it
than
too
you should have.
early. Right.
Yeah, you did a
Gotta
little
wait
more
till
than you
4
should have.
p.m.
Yeah. And saying like, oh, what is okay to say? The Falcons can call that agent and say, hey, we're interested in a quarterback. So, tell it when the free agency happens, we're willing to spend $200 million on a quarterback if you have any clients that fit that. So it's not
exactly.
we know there's conversations that happen before. It's just a matter of how much and how specific you get. If you start negotiating, which it seems to be what they did, you've crossed the line, right? And I think that's ultimately what happened. There's a difference between expressing interest and getting your interest known, and then crossing the line and literally calling them up and being like, hey, we want your guy.
Yeah. Well, also demand, right? Like a lot of quarterbacks hit the free agent market and might have one team, two teams interested.
Yeah.
Like a guy like Kirk Cousins probably had a lot of interest. So it makes you wonder, are they sitting down going, you know what, let's push hard, let's be aggressive, let's break the rules, just to keep the conversation going and getting the deal done, right? Because I feel like a lot of times you get in the middle of the contract terms, things like that, and some of these deals stall out, right? So get an early start. Kirk's happy, doesn't talk to any of their teams. It could be calculated. I could definitely see that. The Eagles were also investigated, and for Saquon Barkley, right? Another, in demand free agent, we'll say, probably had a lot of teams interested, right? But Adam Schefter, NFL informed the Eagles that its investigation did not discover sufficient evidence to support a finding that was that the anti-tampering policy was violated in signing Saquon Barkley. So they did not get punishment. However, the Falcons must have had evidence.
Exactly what I just said, right? So they went up to the line and did not cross it, according to, at least there's no evidence of, no direct phone call, no voicemail, whatever physical evidence there was against the Falcons, there was not against the Eagles. Now, does that mean they probably did have discussions with as quickly as that deal got done? Yeah, something was sketchy there, and we all knew it. But again, those conversations kind of happen in a way outside of, the rules, but not crossing them. So yeah, that one doesn't surprise me. It just means that they tampered a little better than the Falcons did. They did it without
gotta tighten it up down there
without having a trace of evidence. So yeah, and yeah, the fact that deal got done, they probably did exactly the same thing, right? But how they said it and what they did is probably what leads into the legal repercussions of breaking the rules.
Yep. Can you prove it? Right. That's kind of the challenge. All right. So let's get into top questions surrounding the Buffalo Bills. Starting with number 10. Will Josh Allen be the same player after the departure of Stephon Diggs? And I know we've beat this up, right? And this is going to continue to linger on all the way up until the Bills play the Texans in Houston this year. I forgot what week it was, early in the season. But really, like, we go back and look, the last time we saw Josh Allen without Stephon Diggs was his second year in the league, right? And he was not the same player, right? So really, this question's more about, we haven't seen Josh Allen without Stephon Diggs. Will it be the same? Will it be different? What do you think?
Well, you have to trust in Josh Allen, right? That yes, the relationship between Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs was amazing, right? And those two production-wise on the field was great, right? So those guys together brought each other up. Now, Josh Allen's talent level is what it is, right? And he's going to exist outside of Stephon Diggs just fine, right? He still has the elite running ability, all of the arm strength, all of his traits and characteristics are still there. He is still young for his position relatively compared to a Stephon Diggs, right? So his elite ability at the quarterback position although made better by Stephon Diggs, is not in my mind or really at all dependent on a Stephon Diggs. And we're going to see that play out this season, right? So anybody on the national media who wants to speculate and say, oh no, they didn't do this, or oh, Stephon Diggs made Josh Allen who he was, and Josh Allen was nothing before him, isn't watching football, right? So we know that Josh Allen could play with you and I at receiver and still be winning games and making elite plays happen. So Josh Allen, to me, this one is not a worry within Bills Mafia. Now, we could talk about, maybe it's one of your other questions, production from the wide receiver position is something maybe you could say is a concern if you aren't as informed on the Buffalo Bills. But in terms of Bills Mafia, and I think the league, everybody knows who Josh Allen is, and this to me is not a contentious point of debate. It is a thought, it is a question, but we know the answer of this one, and it's Josh Allen is going to be Josh Allen no matter who's around him, and he's going to bring out the best in whoever is around him.
Yeah, and I agree. He's been so good since 2020 with Diggs, upper 30s and touchdowns, but last year has 29. We know Diggs kind of disappeared second half of the season, right? Really more balanced approach on the offense. Diggs not getting as many targets. Does it impact stats? Big question, right? But yeah, like you said, I agree with you 100%. I think Josh Allen's the same player, still has the rushing ability, and I think maybe a balanced approach, like we talked about with bigger receivers, is actually a good thing for Josh Allen, right? He likes to throw the 50-50 ball. I mean, many times he just throws it up anyway, right? And just hopes for the best. I think you'll have, higher catch percentage with the bigger receivers on the roster now, right? So I think Josh will be fine. But again, a player like Diggs, he's just so competitive, brings the juice every week.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there's a little bit in the locker room that you're going to miss out on, because now maybe Josh has to be that person, right? He's going to have to bring the juice and keep everyone up, motivated. Diggs was clearly that person before. So will that impact Josh on the field? Maybe. I mean, everyone likes to go to work and have a challenge, you know what I mean? And if Diggs is there challenging you every day, it makes it easy.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So, and again, you're going to rely on the guys they're out there now. You made a great point. Hands, right? No more of this freaking Gabe Davis 50-50 time, right? Like he doesn't catch the easy one. Sometimes he catches a hard one. You never know what you're going to get. The guys they have now are much more reliable at catching the ball consistently. And that's what you need as a quarterback. If you know where a guy is, or you can find him on the field, you expect that if you can get him the ball, he's going to catch it. And a lot of these guys that we have on this roster, starting with Kincaid and Shakir, the top two in my mind, they're hands guys. They're going to catch pretty much everything you throw to them accurately, and even some that are way off. So, yeah, those two guys alone, plus the rest of the wide receiver core, yes, Josh Allen is going to be fine, if not better, in some statistics, in my mind. So that will play out as the season goes on. And by the end of the year, this isn't even going to be a thought anymore.
Yeah, and then that's why it's number 10 on the list and not higher, right? I don't think there's a lot of concern that Josh Allen's going to change his game all that much, right? It's just more who can fill that role for Stephon Diggs. And maybe that role dissolves, kind of the go-to receiver who can win through route running. You look around the roster, a couple guys can do it, Shakir and Samuel. I don't know if, Mac Hollins and Keon Coleman are going to beat a ton of people through routes, straight up route running, right? So it will be a different approach, but again, I don't think Josh Allen will lose any. All right, so that's number 10. Let's get to number 9.
Number 9, that says 7.
Got out order here. Maybe I'm missing one.
Number 10. That's all right. We can jump to number 7.
All right, jump to 7. I'll find the other ones. All right, number 7. Will Tyler Bass make it back to prior form after struggling late in the season?
Oh, so this is something we kind of discussed a little bit last week when I did my 53-man roster prediction, right? So I do believe, that part of Tyler Bass's struggles were due to issues with the holding by Sam Martin, right? And we've seen this issue pop up with Tyler Bass in the past with bad holding and good Tyler Bass and inconsistent Tyler Bass. So the fact that they brought in Jake Browning as competition for Sam Martin, and we saw Jake Browning, at least in voluntary OTAs, hold for Tyler Bass, and he made, 7 out of 7 kicks. And we see, the report coming out from this week now, Sam Martin holding for Tyler Bass, and he missed like 4 out of 7 or something, which is really bad. And from short and long, it's a struggle to see. You don't want your kicker missing. And this is a guy who Tyler Bass has the leg, the power, we know this, to kick it from anywhere on the field and then some. So it's like, oh, okay, he can kick it from 70 yards out and make it through the uprights. None of us can debate that. We've seen it. He can do it on the practice field, on the actual field. From 70 yards out, this guy can get dead leg power through the uprights. The accuracy issue, I think, is coming from the holding and the inconsistency. And I don't know if it's where Tyler Bass likes it or how the holder actually sets it. Whatever it is, it needs to be to Tyler Bass's liking. I don't care if he wants you to spin it on your finger while he kicks it. You better be able to do that because he's the kicker. And if he can kick it 70 yards, you do what this guy wants. And I'm sorry, but if you're the punter and your job is the holder, I don't give a shit if you can punt. I don't care. We should not care if a punter can punt. Now, we've seen bad punting and what it can lead to. And yes, it's detrimental. And you don't want to have the worst punter in the league. That's for sure. We've seen that. But if the guy is the best holder and also the worst punter, put him on the damn roster because punting is not as important as holding. And Tyler Bass and his kicking matters a lot more than the punting situation. So to me, I'm hopeful that the issues we see from Tyler Bass, the inconsistency that was there was because of inconsistencies with holding or something that he didn't like with the setup, and that the real Tyler Bass, who we've known for the 4 years before that, is the guy who's going to return this season and make those clutch kicks. Now, he wasn't 100% accurate. He's going to miss one from 40 something or whatever. Occasionally, every kicker does.
Sure.
But the power and the ability to say, it's 3rd and 6 from, what would be a 58-yard field goal. You should not hesitate to put Tyler Bass in that situation. We know he can make it, and he should be able to go out there and make it. So I think that is what we want to end up seeing. Now, where Sean McDermott is on that is what ultimately matters. Because even if he's subconsciously now thinking about, should we actually put Tyler Bass out there, that's not going to be good. So I think this preseason is really going to determine not so much. I mean, training camp, you can see what you can see, but preseason is when you're in real game action. And that's when, the conditions are right. There's actually guys coming at you, all that. I think those games are going to matter for how we see Tyler Bass go back to the consistency we've seen from him, expect from him, or the inconsistency of having to figure out what the heck is really going wrong here.
Yeah, and a lot of times with kickers, it's mental, right? Tyler Bass in the regular season, 24 of 29. He's really good all year. Versus the Jets in week 11, 4 for 4. Just the misses were versus the Giants, he was 0 for 2. It was an ugly game, if you remember. Bills won. Quentin Morris got the game-winning touchdown, 14-9. Ugly game. New England, where they lost, right? He was 1 for 2. And then Philadelphia, the Bills would have won that game, but Bass went 2 for 4 in that game. The struggle started in the playoffs, right? Which is surprising for him. 2 home games in Buffalo, right? It's wintertime. It's windy. He's 1 for 3 versus the Steelers, and then 1 for 2 versus the Kansas City Chiefs. And then we all know that one, but then 2 for 5 overall in the playoffs. So that's where the concern comes in. You look at that stat, 2 for 5 in the playoffs. It's just, that's when you need to be the best. You know what I mean? So, and the one he did miss was huge.
Yeah.
Huge letdown for the whole city, for the whole team, right? Even probably the NFL at this point. The Chiefs have won so much, nobody wants to see them go back, right? So, I mean, can you get over that? And that's the big question, And, you hear things, he's hitting 70-yarders. We all know he's talented. All the kickers in the NFL are extremely talented, right? It's just the mental piece. Can you bounce back from that? And I'm not sure if Tyler Bass has really had adversity to this point in his career, right? We haven't really seen this from him. He's been really good every year. He's been good in the postseason up until last year. So it'll be fun to watch, right? Every kick's going to be that much more important because he missed that big one. And if he misses it, people are going to hate him, but if he makes it, they're like, well, he's supposed to make it, right? So
yes,
it's going to be a long
get
hole
the
to
praise.
climb out of. It's probably going to take the whole season to climb
Correct.
out of, because he doesn't get a lot of opportunities to hit game winners and things like
Right.
that. I mean, really,
Right.
I can't recall going back how many game winners he's hit, right? There's been a few, mostly tied. Like I remember the Jets, I think he tied it late with,
Yeah,
late
yeah,
in the
and
game.
certainly impactful. He's made a few like at the half where he's made the field goal and the Bills end up winning by 3. It's not a game-winning field goal, but it is
Right.
the game influential points that mattered in a play that ultimately came down to him or nothing, right? It wasn't like you can go for a Hail Mary at the half. You're going for the long field goal, and if he makes it, you win. If he doesn't, you don't. So that still matters, and he's done that multiple times. And I do think if the ideal situation here for me is that he's not in any high pressure situations to start the season. He makes his kicks consistently. And again, what I'm worried about is that subconscious part of McDermott that's like, I'm not going to put him out there in high pressure situations. We want to see him when he's supposed to be out there, and we want him to gain that confidence and make those kicks the way we know he can. And if he misses, we can't say it's the end of the world. So in a game where he does miss, you hope that it's not impactful that much, right? Yeah. And then going into the postseason, like you said, you need him to be at a point where both his confidence and McDermott's confidence in him is high enough that it's just written in stone. Yeah, we're going for the field goal. We have Tyler Bass.
And you got to wonder too. Let's go back to the Kansas City game for a second. That last drive, right? Josh throwing a 30-yard, attempted touchdown pass to Shakir, doesn't get there, and then throws the ball away in the next play and third down. I mean, they have all the faith in the world in Tyler Bass at that moment. I don't think you try those. Josh would probably try it anyway, but really, like from a planning, play calling perspective, I don't know if you call plays like that if your kicker's struggling. You know what I mean? So maybe that gets brought up again if he continues to struggle, which I don't think he will. Like the pressure's off early in the season, and the pressure will be back on in the playoffs. But if he misses 2 like that, it's gonna be really bad. Right.
It's not going to get him on very good bases.
Right. So long hole to climb out of, but
the dangerous part is being a kicker. We've seen this happen with other kickers. It happens all around the league all the time, right?
Seen careers
mentally, it just gets in their heads. You miss 1 kick, you miss 2 kicks. All of a sudden, the most consistent guy you had isn't there anymore. You get cut. You bring in next body who's at least a little more consistent. And then that guy usually then goes on to his next team where he gets back to normal, if not maybe not the most dominant, but back to a normal kicker that you would expect at least. So I hope that doesn't happen for Bass. And the limiting factor there is he's one of the highest paid kickers, so you can't just afford to cut him and replace him.
Certainly
with
capable, right? Extremely capable
kicker.
And
again, he has more power than pretty much any kicker in the league, I'd say. So the fact that he can do it means that you want to keep him around, and he's getting paid a lot. You can't just get rid of him. But you have to see it on the field. So if he's as inconsistent this year as he was last year, he's in trouble. I put it that way.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll see if the Bills play home playoff games this year. But if they do, I mean, Tyler Bass will be a big part of that, right? These games are always close, right? Josh will always keep it close. And, he's going to have to think about the fans, going to have to think about last year, going to also have to think about the wind. Like, I feel like in Buffalo, it's more than most kickers, to kind of get everything right. So the pressures will be on him, no doubt. But I have all the faith in the world in him. I think he'll come out of it. All right, so let's learn how to count here. Appreciate you covering me on that and bring up 2 other things here. Number 9, will Kaiir Elam ever reach his potential in Buffalo? I mean, we've had this question every year, but I feel like this year, kind of pivotal, right? As a fan, I don't want to see the first-round pick from a few years ago sit the bench the entire season again. Just don't want to see it, right? And whatever reason it is, it seems to be internal. Maybe it's injury, whatever it is. You got to put the guy in the field at some capacity.
I do agree, and I think he will see the field a little more, being now that he is what we call CB3. We've talked about this before. Taron Johnson is automatically on the field, so CB3 is backing up CB1 and 2 on the outside. So that's where he is, right? He's CB3 on this team, meaning he's going to see significant snaps. Those guys are going to come off the field at some point during the game, and Elam is the next guy in. And to me, we got to remember that he's still super young, right? He's still learning. Yeah, we've heard all the things about, well, they drafted Kaiir Elam, but he was more of a, press man than a zone guy. And now the Bills are a zone defense. He's got a lot to learn. So any rookie, you have to give him a year buffer to just learn, right? Now, at the end of the season, we learned that he was dealing with an injury all last year that was affecting him. Any player, that's going to set you back, right? Let alone a young player who didn't get off to a great start and all the rumors were flying. I think in-house they feel they know what they think Kaiir Elam's ceiling is, and they want to get the most out of him. They know how. They have a plan for how. And what is coming out and what the rumors are only due to the fact that he was our first-round pick, and there's a lot of expectation that comes with that. I still think Kaiir Elam can be a CB, 2 CB starting cornerback and be very good at it, right? And be worth that first-round pick in terms of a cornerback. Now, he didn't start out the gate, and you only get 5 years with a first-round pick, but he's played well when given opportunities. He's made plays when given opportunities.
Right?
Yeah, so I think
it's more challenging to call him a bust because it goes like this in the game too, right? You see him get beat, you see him make a penalty, you see him get beat again, then he makes a game-changing play, right? Yes. So it's like, I think he have like 8 starts and 4 interceptions.
Right.
I mean, that's a pretty high rate.
Big takeaway play, but he also gives up 80-yard plays, 120 yards to one receiver. Yeah, I mean, that's not what you want to see out of a guy, obviously. But the fact of the matter is, Kaiir Elam is not going anywhere, right? He is staying put in Buffalo because he was a first-round pick. You can say that, but mainly because there's uncertainty at the cornerback position in Buffalo, right? Rasul Douglas, this is his last year under contract. He's going to get paid next year, most likely. We want to see the same play out of Rasul Douglas that we did last year after the trade. He came in and really played well. I'd love to see him be just as consistent, if not take another step now that he's been with the team. But at the end of the year, he's a free agent. And maybe the Bills pay him, and then we have to figure out where Kaiir Elam fits. Maybe he only is this rotational CB3. But if you're telling me that Benford and Rasul Douglas and Kaiir Elam are our top 3 cornerbacks, I'm feeling pretty good about that position if Kaiir Elam takes that step this year. So if he doesn't
you're feeling good now. One injury.
Correct.
Are you still feeling good?
Yeah, I mean, it depends, again, on the progress that Kaiir Elam takes, but certainly him going in is not like a bullet to the chest for the team, right? He's capable of playing the position. Is he as good as Rasul Douglas? No, not right now. I'd rather have Rasul Douglas out there. That's why he's starting over him. And Benford is just shot through the moon. He's one of the best in the league now. So I'm not afraid of having Kaiir Elam out there and seeing him progress. He's going to be targeted if he's out there. He's going to be challenged, but that's what this game is all about. You either can cut it or you can't. And I think he can. So he just needs the opportunity and to learn from those situations, right? When given the opportunity, he can learn a lot on the bench, but he's got to be given the opportunity. And if he's ultimately only CB3 for the next couple of years, that to me is okay because he's going to get playing time. And as long as he continues to be consistent at that level, that's okay. Is it what we expected from him? No. Is it good enough for a cornerback who's drafted in the first round? Probably not, but it is good for the team. You're still getting value out of that player. So ultimately, to me, that's what matters. If you're set at the cornerback position, who cares if Kaiir Elam is CB3? That doesn't matter. As long as he's good enough to be CB3. The question is he going to reach potential even at CB3? To me, he's already there, and he has the ability to move up. And if they see enough from him, then maybe they move on from Rasul Douglas, insert Kaiir Elam, and find other guys to be the new CB3, which could be already on the roster as well. And Ingram and some of the other guys they're grooming. or a draft pick down the line.
Yeah.
So
well, he's also going into year 3.
yeah,
And you kind of want to, first round pick, you'd expect to be a leader in this type of situation, right? With all the turnover they had, all the new people coming in, guys like Christian Benford were kind of late round picks. You'd expect Kyrie Elam to kind of be the leader in this secondary, right? At this point, Taron Johnson obviously still there, but the other thing he lost though is, guys like Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, who if you're struggling, they're there to help you. They're a step ahead. They've been in the system a long time. They're not doing a lot of thinking, right? That may change this year. Whereas if you're struggling, you could see some big plays going deep, right? Because maybe the safeties are still thinking a little bit, don't fully understand the system as well as Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. So that's a factor as well. And another thing I was going to ask you before we move on, at what point do you trade Kyrie Elam to give him a fresh start? Do right by him? Trade
year
him
4,
to if you're not going to play him, you trade him at some point, right?
year 4 when his contract is up.
So you play out the contract.
No, you go through at least year 3. I'm saying
Right. So you
year
decline
4,
the 5th-year option.
Yes, trade him
year
year 4.
4.
And even then, it's not a guarantee. Why not just keep him? Just because?
Because you're not going to play him.
I don't care. You're CB3. We still need that. If we sign Rasul Douglas,
no.
2
He's
more
not
years.
CB3. If it's like last year, you're not playing him. He's not CB3.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah,
last year.
Right.
Oh my God. Then you're giving up on the guy. I don't think that's going to be the case. But if that ends up happening, then you've already given up on the guy, and it's like you just cut him. Kind of like with the Stephon Diggs situation. It just needed to happen. You didn't want that, but it happened. And what are you going to get for him? Maybe a 6th round pick. He's shown nothing. You're giving up on him for a reason. Just because you took him in the 1st round doesn't mean somebody's going to give you a 2nd or 3rd round pick for Kyrie Elam.
Oh, sure. But
if he's not showing anything, you're just going to move on.
You're not getting anything anyway, right? So any value would be good in that scenario.
Sure.
But again, you're one injury away from this cornerback room being extremely thin, in my opinion.
You don't.
If Kyrie struggles, what's that?
So then, right. If Kyrie,
if he ends up struggling and you have injury to Douglas or Benford,
certainly,
who do you turn to? I mean, it could
Kyrie,
get real thin real quick.
Well, the Bills are. I think they have a lot of confidence in Ingram, who's currently probably the CB4,
ready for prime time.
And then that's when you would call up a veteran and be like, "Who are we adding to this team?"
Right.
Who's not some guy who's 48 years old and like last year when we signed what's his name? But yeah, I mean, you got to
AJ Klein. Yeah.
No, the cornerback. Oh my gosh, what's his name? Chad, help us out. The cornerback who's like been on the Bills, and last year we signed him again, and he ended up coming back and playing.
Josh Norman.
Yes, thank you, Josh Norman. Yes,
yeah.
Good old Josh Norman for the McDermott defense.
All right, we've hit Josh Norman. It's time to move on.
Exactly. That's
right.
Not good.
We are in order still. Number 8, outside of Taron Johnson, who are the leaders in the secondary? Kind of ties into this, but this is a big question, right? A lot of new people. Yeah. Rasul Douglas only on a 1 year, doesn't really have the long-term vision, I would say. Who's the leaders?
I mean,
Mike Edwards, he's been around
on the field
right?
In terms of their play. Benford is a guy who, in terms of his play on the field, he's definitely a leader.
He's got to be the leader.
In terms of the backfield itself, I think you could put some of that on Taylor Rapp now, because he is the one who played with Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer and learned the system from those guys and knows the communication. And again, Sean McDermott chose him to come back and said, I'm the defensive guy. We had this guy for a year. He passed, and we want him more. I don't have that faith in Taylor Rapp. So he is one of those guys that I was like, I didn't want to re-sign him. I thought he failed his audition, but clearly Sean McDermott saw a lot to work with there. So I do think that in terms of the safety room and veteran leadership, he knows the defense. He learned under the guys who led this defense and made it what it is in terms of the secondary, Poyer and Hyde. And I think he has the faith of the coaching staff to be the leadership. Taron Johnson has always been a leadership on the field type of guy. Him and Matt Milano are very similar in that sense, right? You don't hear them squawking at the media a lot. You don't hear them giving out quotes. They don't. Okay. They barely talk even when they're interviewed. It's like yes, no answers from them. Right. So, but those guys on the field are all pro selections by the NFL, both of them, for a reason. And it's because when they're on the field, they walk the walk. They don't necessarily need to talk the talk. They walk the walk, and they speak for themselves. I do think Taron Johnson is going to be one of those leaders now, a vocal leader, a more vocal
I don't know if he
leader.
has a choice at this point. I mean,
Right.
And Rasul Douglas obviously will be in that conversation as well, because
he's a veteran.
He's the veteran.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But so between those two guys, they'll probably be fine. But I mean, you start looking, Rasul Douglas might not be back. Taron Johnson, I mean, I'm sure he'll be around, but you start looking for the next generation of leadership, because the leadership's been so good on this team for so long with Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer.
Yes.
That it feels a little bit empty. You know what I mean? But it'll play out again. And, when you're together long enough, as they are with practice and hanging out outside of the room, outside of practice, outside of work, the leaders just naturally fall in place, right? I'm just kind of curious of who that's going to end up being.
Yes.
All right, so that was number 8. Just showing you number 7.
Yeah, because we're
in order here. Yep, we did talk about that. Number 6. Will the offensive line continue to perform well with David Edwards at left guard? Right? Talk of Connor McGovern going to center. David Edwards going to left guard.
So,
the reason this is higher on the list is because they were so good last year.
Oh, yeah.
I thought, no one saw Mitch Morris coming. I mean, if you read the numbers, sure, you look at the age, the numbers, it makes sense. But when you're watching the team last year, like, man, this offensive line is the best the Bills have had with Josh Allen, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, it just felt like they shouldn't have messed with that. Right?
Yeah.
So now I'm very curious to know, will this be the same? Will they, they played every snap together. I thought they worked well as a unit. Will that be similar this year?
Yeah, we're getting into the question portion of the questions. And what I mean by that is, this is the question, right? If we had this answer, man, we'd know how the season turns out, right? So this is going to be a play out during the season question. We don't know, right? We have never seen David Edwards in at left guard for the Buffalo Bills, especially with these guys around him. We have never seen Connor McGovern take a snap at center for the Buffalo Bills. So it's a different offensive line. It's a different chemistry. It's different communication. Poor freaking guys, Josh Allen, right? Saying, this was my best offensive line you've given me in 7 years. And now we're changing it completely, right? Basically. And to me, if Edwards doesn't somehow pan out the way that the Bills are banking on, they have other options there that they're going to rotate. So I don't think the job, although I think it is David Edwards' job to lose because he has been in the system, knows the offense. They've had this. It seems like this was their plan to move.
He does have a lot of experience, right?
He's been in the league
exactly. Quite a while.
Yeah.
And no starts last year.
He started for the Rams 2 years ago.
He's got 45 starts with the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like 2022 was injury related, but then before that it was all double-digit starts, right? One season in 2021, started all 17 games. Then gets to Buffalo and really just depth player. He only played 13% of the snaps, right? It's an extremely low number. Before that, it's 95, 190, right? So getting a lot more playing time. So, just sitting the bench in Buffalo, but does have a lot of experience to bring to the table.
Yes, and actually, I wouldn't be mad if he loses the left guard job. So the Bills have already said that Van Pran-Granger is going to get starts, is going to get snaps at guard, right? They're going to try him.
Careful with the words there. Careful.
Yeah, it's going to get starts at guard. But if he ends up winning the starting guard job, it seems like Connor McGovern. Did you hear Connor McGovern speak from OTAs?
I saw the video on YouTube. I haven't had a chance to watch it. He sat with Dawson Knox. I'll watch that though.
Dude, he basically emphatically said, "I am the center of this team." 100 different ways.
So our theories of
100
let's
different ways.
Let's see what Van Pran-Granger can do.
No,
it was just completely wrong.
Absolutely.
He's either going to be backup center or they're going to try him at guard.
Correct. Oh, he's definitely a backup center. I think the plan is, we know you can play center, right? We know you're good at that. You're going to practice that still because ultimately, I think he's going to be the backup center, Van Granger, much like some of the shifting around that has happened in the past with the Bills, right? You have guards who are also your backup centers. But they're playing him at guard because if he ends up being that good at guard, just like Connor McGovern, who was a center and became a guard in the NFL, very good guard with the Dallas Cowboys. Now he's, was a very good guard last year, and now he's moving back to center, to center in the NFL. We don't know what that looks like, but we know the team was excited about it. He was excited about it. What I started saying earlier was, I think that was the plan. Connor McGovern was given a contract by the Buffalo Bills with the promise that he would become the center. And that's probably why he chose to come to Buffalo over other options, because they told him, you will be the center next year. We have a decision to make with our current center, Mitch Morse, and we're going to move on from that contract, and you will be our center when given the opportunity. And after hearing him talk, it was like, God damn, dude, we get it. You want to be the center. You are the center. You're at your natural
He likes playing
position.
center. That's fine.
You have to.
The only problem I have is he's so good at left guard, especially in pass protection.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Right.
One of the best
and
pass
we have
protecting
no idea
left guards in the league. Right.
If he just doesn't have that chemistry with Josh Allen or whatever. But it sounds like that's not going to be a problem. Connor McGovern right now is cemented in as the starting center. So if that's the case, then Van Granger could still compete with Edwards at the guard position. And if Edwards loses the left guard position, that is not scary to me whatsoever, because where we know what he can do is that sixth offensive lineman, and he did that very, very well. And I wanted to see him come back for that alone. And we know that Edwards has started at left guard and is capable of doing that. We don't know about Van Granger. So it's a competition for him. My expectation is that Edwards will be handed the job day one, that Connor McGovern will be handed the job day one. And until that doesn't work, or there are cracks in that system, that's going to be the line, no matter how good Van Granger does in the preseason, right? So now we saw that competition work out last year with Osiris Torrance, a second-round pick, right? So, but that was more of a position of need at the time. The right guard was like, who's going to be the right guard? Mm-hmm. It does seem like the left guard is David Edwards, and everybody else is competing with him, right? They're competing against him. They can pass him. It wouldn't surprise me if they do, but it's going to be an uphill battle. And I think opening day, Edwards.
And I think that's the right strategy, right? If the continuity worked for them so good last year, why not announce it early, get the reps in early, things like, mandatory minicamp. You can understand what your responsibilities are clearly, right? Mm-hmm. And let it play out. But I think that's the right strategy. Call it early, own it, right? Connor McGovern's the center, period. All right, we'll keep an eye on that one. Number 5, who will step up at wide receiver? Shakir, Samuel, or Coleman? I think there was a time where this could have been number 1 on this list. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. However, I think the more you look at the Bills roster and you see James Cook, you see Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, and you start looking at the receivers and you're like, okay, well, as a group, this group might be better than last year. Now that we've got to know these guys, watch their tape, right? But I think early on, this was the number 1 question, but I think it's fallen a little bit, right?
Yes.
But really, for this one, there's 3 guys to talk about. Who's going to be the go-to, right? Who's going to be the 1,000-yard receiver? That seems to be a big question.
Okay, so we'll start with this. Coleman is a rookie, and I do not expect him to have expectations coming into the season, especially to start. They might get him some action. He might get some touchdowns early in certain situations. He might make a big play here.
Help in the red zone for sure.
But he's not going to be an every snap go-to guy right away. Because he's a rookie, he's going to learn. They're going to ease him in the right way, especially because of the other 2 guys on this list, Shakir and Samuel. Those guys, specifically Khalil Shakir, has the best chemistry of the wide receivers, the only chemistry, with Josh Allen, right? We've seen what that is. We know it works. It's improved. It has a big growth curve right now. And even if it stays flat at where it was, we're in great shape, right? The X factor to me that is being under-discussed, and you and I have talked about this excessively, and one of my biggest pet peeves of this offseason is Curtis Samuel has been disrespected by the NFL, by the media, by the talking narratives that the Bills don't have a wide receiver. Are you kidding me? Samuel has produced with dirtbag quarterbacks everywhere he's been. been through, everything he's been
Can
through
you
in the
name? Let's
NFL.
see. Can you name some of them? Okay, Carson Wentz is one.
Yeah.
Sam Howell last
Yeah.
year.
I mean, come on. These guys are not
How far back those?
elite
Carolina.
players.
Cam Newton,
Yeah,
right?
at the end of Cam Newton, not
And
the good Cam
yeah.
Newton. So I mean, and you've seen him what Curtis Samuel's skill set does, what he is, a guy you can put anywhere on the field, a guy who has elite level speed when he has the ball in his hands. That type of player has not been in the arsenal for a Josh Allen at all. And getting the ball to a guy like that, to a veteran who knows what he's doing on the field. This isn't a rookie. Just because he hasn't played with Allen, that might take time to build too, but he's going to be a reliable target for him. And if you ask me right now who could get 1,000 yards, I mean, Kincaid and Shakir, I will expect to be the top 2 targeted guys. But Samuel has that X factor of the speed, the after catch ability. To me, he's the upside guy who can be the 1,000-yard receiver. It's going to be spread out here, but Shakir and Samuel, they're going to get theirs. And so will Kincaid and Knox and all that. But Samuel, to me, is the biggest X factor value to this team that people aren't talking about. The Bills got worse at wide receiver. No, we upgraded. The Bills upgraded when they signed Curtis Samuel. He was in that top tier of free agent wide receivers that I didn't think the Bills were going to be able to target, but they did. So the fact that they brought him in is being so understated, and I can't wait. That's one of the most exciting things to me is I am unbelievably excited to see Curtis Samuel play with Josh Allen and the chemistry that those two have on the field.
Oh, it's a huge opportunity for him, no doubt.
Yes. And it's the most, in terms of what is going to flash on the field, that is what is going to flash on the field. We've seen what Shakir can do. Nobody's going to be surprised when he makes production and he does what he does. When Samuel's out there, Bills fans even have not seen a guy like this connect with Josh Allen and consistently make plays. And
what do you like? What do you like about Curtis Samuel? Well, he's going to his 8th year as a pro. He's only 27, right? Mm-hmm. So he's kind of still in his prime, but he came in the league so young.
They gave him a 4-year contract. We can't overlook that. This isn't a guy who's one and done with the Bills. They know he's going to be good for multiple years.
Yeah. Never really been the go-to receiver. His highest, yards per season was in 2020 with Carolina at 851. Kind of always been a complimentary piece, never been the go-to, and really hasn't finished a lot of seasons, right? A lot of injury history in there. Last 2 seasons has played 17 and 16 games or suited up for them. Not a big touchdown guy, right? Last 2 years, 8 touchdowns, right? Before that, he had an injury, so it's none. But again, you like the speed, right? The experience, I think, matters. And he knows this system, which how many people know what Joe Brady likes and work for Joe Brady? Samuel has that as well. So, I mean, there is a lot to like there. I'm a little concerned with injuries, right? But
certainly,
you're concerned with injuries with every player, right? But I think if you do lose a guy like Samuel, now you got big questions, right?
Yeah, because he's so unique in the role that he fills, right?
Right. There's no other player like him on the roster.
The next guy up might be, Marquez Valdez-Scantling or, one of the guys that ends up making at the end of the roster, whoever that next guy is, that isn't going to get as much playing time and certainly is not going to play the role that Samuel would in the offense. I think they're good enough to, be a stopgap in a case where maybe Samuel misses a game or 2 or whatever, has to sit out a half because of a stinger or something. I'm okay with the depth that we have there coming in and filling in because you have Shakir, Coleman, all these other go-tos that will spread the ball around still. So you'll miss Samuel, but the guy coming in to fill him in is going to still produce. It'll be a step down in a different type of production, but it's not a huge scare if he has to miss 1 or 2 games.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I can't help but think, like 2 years ago, they tried to make Isaiah McKenzie a starting receiver. Do you remember that? And they had some really unique concepts for him. And he actually did pretty good in his role that year, 2 years ago. So I'd expect Samuel will have a lot of plays catered to his skill set, right? He can play running back, jet sweep, all that type of stuff. I think that will definitely be in the playbook for him. Especially in the red zone, right? He's great in that way, but he's a lot bigger than McKenzie, a lot shiftier, at that size. I mean, McKenzie's so small, it's kind of hard to watch sometimes, but I'd expect those concepts to come back. All right, moving on here, getting low on time. Number 4, what does year 2 look like with 2 starting tight ends on the roster, right? Got a little taste of this last year, but the question still remains. Everyone wants Kincaid on the field, right? He's the shiny new player, right? First round
Yes.
pick. But I mean, Dawson Knox gets injured last year, but still, I mean, these are 2 really, really good tight ends, really smart players with unique skill sets at their size, right? What does that look like this year? I think it's one of the top questions for the Bills.
Definitely, right? And certainly we did not get to see them both playing healthy together on the field, right? We kind of saw early, obviously, it was rotational, and Kincaid was a rookie, so you got a lot to learn always. Knox was kind of still playing, and then Kincaid took over, and then, it was Knox was injured the rest of the year, and when he came back, he wasn't really 100%. We don't know what that looks like now. Now to know what Dawson Knox was to Josh Allen before Kincaid came in the picture. That's my expectation of Dawson Knox. Do what you do. You don't need to be anything different. Just do what you do. Be that good tight end, very good tight end, and top dollar tight end in that sense. And then you add a Kincaid who is really, really good at catching the ball and getting action. We are going to be impressed with what we see from these two because, again, in OTAs, they talked about how these 2 guys on the field, you don't know what the offense is going to do. They can run from 2 tight end sets. They can pass from 2 tight end sets. You can, do all sorts of things from these 2 tight end sets. And I fully expect that to be the case. The Bills are looking to be dynamic with those 2 on the field so that you don't know what they're doing. And that's only going to lead to production no matter what you do, because tight ends can block and tight ends can catch, so it's going to be impressive to see how they actually implement it and where they line up on the field together, right?
Yeah.
Because
I don't think that'll change too much. I mean, we'll see if Kincaid is grown. Obviously, need to work on the blocking, right? But I'm not really sure if that's his skill set. I don't think he's a blocking tight end necessarily. I don't think he's ever going to be that, right? He's an F tight end. He plays in the slot, and you still have an advantage though because he can match up really well against linebackers, right? And that's what you love about him. And Knox really he plays a traditional, vertical tight end role for this team, right? In line blocking, all the stuff you like.
Yes.
But I think it's an advantage in 2 ways. One is when you're playing a smaller finesse defense, like the Bills defense was last year, Kansas City played 3 tight end sets a lot of the game and just pushed them around. You don't have that option, right, with these guys. And the other thing is, like I talked about, if you have a mismatch or a favorable situation, Kincaid can win these routes one-on-one consistently, right? And that's something you really like. And really you can do that out of 3 tight end sets too, or 2 tight end sets as well, right? You can get favorable matchups with them because they're so versatile at their size, especially Kincaid as his size and speed, right? So it's unique. You just got to put it all together. But we did see Kansas City switch to that. They played a lot of 2 tight end sets last year. And it worked out for them, obviously. I mean, they were in every game, they obviously won the Super Bowl, but not so much mimicking that, but also blocking with James Cook, get 2 extra blockers in there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unique things you could do with them, but I don't think they're the same type of player. Like a lot of people want to see Kincaid play in line like Knox and play the traditional tight end. It's just not his skill set, right?
I mean, they'll line him up everywhere. They will do things like that just to mix it up. But Kincaid is a slot receiver more so, and Knox is more, even though he is really a pass catching tight end by a lot of the definition of tight end, he can still block and do all the traditional tight end set things. So
right, which you still need. Yeah,
exactly. Yes.
All right, so I think we'll look at that. That's going to be one of the top things going into the season. Number 3, will Matt Milano be the same player after the injury last season? It's a big one, right? And look, the smarts are there. The aggressiveness, I think, with him is there. It's just the re-injury stuff. We saw it with Trey White. Just your careers end quick in the NFL with this type of stuff, right? And I don't know a lot of details about his injury, but
yeah, they haven't released much.
Is it a type that can get re-injured? I mean, is he going to be careful now? I mean, there's just a lot of questions around that.
Yeah.
Will we see the same player?
No qualms about it. Matt Milano is my favorite Bills player, right? And he has been since literally we started this podcast 7 years ago, right? I mean, I was the original Matt Milano stan. I was the guy saying that I used to boil it down for people and say, Matt Milano on the field, defense good. Matt Milano not on the field, defense bad. That's what happened with the Bills. And I was the first person to point that out and say, the Bills defense is good because this guy is making plays, because this guy does everything he's supposed to on the field. And when I said that, people started to catch on. And then it was all of a sudden everybody could see because he turned into an all-pro player and he got the big contract that he deserved. Not really big contract. He got a very team-friendly contract at the time. And to me, I have faith that Matt Milano will be Matt Milano. He has the mental ability. Now, his physical capacity and what he's able to do, we won't know. And that, again, this is one of those questions that will remain a question until we see it play out on the field. But I have faith that even if Matt Milano is not 100% physically, he's still going to be 100% mentally on the field, and he's still going to do everything he needs to make that defense succeed while he's on the field, even if he might have lost a step in something or whatever, the technical footwork or whatever you want to say about his injury, right? So I have full confidence in Matt Milano. I think he will continue to be the cog that makes the whole defense turn, basically. But will he be an all-pro? Am I saying he's going to be an all-pro this year? No, that's not my expectation. My expectation is he leads this defense the way we know he can and has for the last 7 years. So I continue to say, yes, I have confidence he's going to be Matt Milano. And if he, by chance, isn't, then, the Bills have brought in a lot of depth at the linebacker position. And I think that's why, because they saw what happened last year and they said, we can't deal with this again. So, we want to have veteran guys who have done it before on the roster already so that they know what is going to happen if they need to step in. And hopefully they never see the field, but they are, important pieces to have in terms of depth on this defense and on this team. That's another pet peeve of mine, by the way. I know this isn't relevant to the question necessarily, but I made it relevant to the question. People are like, oh, this team isn't as deep as we've seen before. There isn't as much, depth on this roster as it had. I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? There's more depth at linebacker, right? Like, I might not be as confident in the depth that.
Well, they were really thin last year. I think most people realize they were extremely thin last year. So when Matt Milano goes down, everyone's shocked.
It's chaos. Yeah,
it's chaos. Dorian Williams not ready to play early in the year.
Yes.
Matt Milano went out week 5.
We were still young at the position.
So, right. So, AJ Klein played in the playoff game. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yes.
That means you're thin, right?
Yeah.
So they did the right thing by, kind of stacking that position. But
and just
Milano's injury, like I said, week 5 last year, I think it was Jacksonville, right?
Yeah, anyway, in London. Yeah.
So it was a fractured leg and torn ACL, which we know ACLs, there's been players who come back earlier from that, but typically 9 months. But you compile that with a fractured leg. I mean, that's a pretty serious injury.
Yep. Absolutely.
Just got somber in here.
Yeah. Well, and again, they haven't said a lot about his recovery, specifically what the injury was, what other things happened related to the injury. They've been kind of dancing around it in a lot of ways, probably to just, it's medical information. They never want to release that. They're careful with that. But what we've seen, again, what we started the show with, that was the most exciting news, was that he was back on the field doing drills. He wasn't able to, participate in practice, or fully participate, but he was out there and he was doing stuff. So that is a good sign for this time of the year, because even if you're slightly hesitant, you're not letting him do a dang thing until he needs to.
And it's just the reality of the NFL. Like a guy like Matt Milano, who's really, what was he, 5th round pick, and then, becoming an all-pro, is continuing to go up, right? And the ceiling was extremely high for him last year and just gets cut short. And now you're questioning, can he even do it, right? Which I'm sure he will, but the question still remains.
Yeah. Where did you get the ACL information? Because I didn't hear that at all. It was a leg injury, but they never said torn
Oh, just
ACL, as
quick
far as I know.
Google search on NBC Sports.
Interesting.
Yeah,
So I don't know that they ever actually released that information. They just said leg injury, and
yeah,
it's been mysterious ever since.
right. And
We've
I
had,
don't get into medical too much, but
yeah, that's why I
it
asked,
was
because I'm,
serious.
yeah, it was definitely a very serious. I mean, he was out for the whole year, and still is working his way back.
All right, we got two more. I know we're over time a little bit. But that's all right. Number 2, will Von Miller be a productive defensive end at 35 years old? Right. This is the second most important question
Yes.
this offseason. Just because the contract was huge, a lot of expectation. Everyone loved the idea of Von Miller.
Mm-hmm.
Again, same thing. Injury, really slow comeback. It seems right.
Uh-huh.
And that still seems to be the excuse. And
Yeah.
obviously his health's number one over football, but we want to see Von Miller, right? Everyone's very excited about him. I think the fan base is
Mm-hmm.
extremely excited about having Von Miller
Sure.
on the team,
Sure.
going for the 3 Super Bowls with 3 different teams. That's really exciting story.
Yeah.
Von's a great person. So I mean, what do you think? I know you have a lot of opinions about Von Miller, but
I do. I
does
mean,
he return to form another year older?
I love the leadership of the guy. They brought him in, let's be honest. They paid him to come in here and be a difference maker and be a leader and be the guy who's won a Super Bowl and teach this team how, right? And to me, again, I said last year, like, I don't care. We knew he was coming off a major injury. I don't care if he plays a single snap in the season. I don't care. Zero production, zero tackles, zero whatever. When it came to the postseason, I wanted him to be ready to go. And they didn't take that approach last year. They brought him back, which we now know too early, way too early. And he wasn't ready and he wasn't geared up and he looked like crap and he couldn't do anything. And he was useless on the field. And I was angry that he was on the field at all, because he was
Yeah,
ineffective. It's like,
I
dude,
do remember
use
that.
your
Yeah.
damn eyes at this point. I don't care how much you're paying him. He can't play. Put somebody else out there. So I was angry that they put him on the field. And he didn't live up to it last year. Now, we can chalk that all up to injury. He's now removed from that. He's continuing to improve. He's continuing his normal workout regimen, his normal preparation. I believe he's going to improve from, I mean, you can't get worse than last year, honestly. It can't.
Right.
You wouldn't
Yeah.
have him on the roster.
3 or 4 sacks would do it.
Yeah,
Make you better than last
exactly.
year.
So this is where I'm at with Von Miller, right? I think of Greg Rousseau and AJ Epinesa as defensive ends 1 and 2, right? Von Miller is going to be a rotational guy who I want to have impact when he's given the opportunity. I don't care if he gets 5 snaps a game. I want to see impact from 5 snaps a game that matter, right? I don't want to see him out there for 4 plays in a row. No. Take his ass off the field, put him on for the play that matters, let him have impact then, right? And it's, you're not going to get 4 sacks out of 5 plays per game, right? That's not reasonable expectation, but you do expect him to beat the guys he's going up against, or at least bottle them up so that they're paying attention to him and the other guy gets somewhere, right? And affects the play. That still is an impactful play in my mind. He wasn't any of that last year. So 5-10 plays a game, reasonable for Von Miller.
Right.
He's not going to get the majority of snaps. He's
Well,
not going to be out there all the time. He's not going to be, the superstar player. Now, come playoffs, all bets are off. Like if he's playing at a high level, you put him out there as much as you can and let him have the impact he can.
well, I think
to me, that's managing it during the season. Regardless of where Von Miller is at, AJ Epinesa and Greg Rousseau are defensive ends 1 and 2, and Von Miller is a rotational guy.
You're putting AJ at number 1. He only played 40% of the snaps last year.
Rousseau
I don't know. I look at this and I think Von Miller's a starter. That should be the expectation, right? The 5 snaps a game, I understand. That was last year's expectation. He should be fully healed by now, right? That's the expectation. He's still on the roster. He's, he took a pay cut, but he's still getting, still the highest paid player in the room.
Yeah.
So I mean, the expectation should be Von Miller starts over AJ Epinesa, and AJ Epinesa continues his role as a rotational player, 40% of the snaps, right? That should be the expectation for Von Miller. Now,
it's your expectation, not mine. I want him to have impact regardless. Last year, 0 impact, 0, none, no hurries, no whatevers.
Now,
he couldn't get anything on the quarterback.
Now, if he physically is unable to start, right, then you go down to the 5, whatever you're saying, 5 snaps a game, whatever. You want to see some impact, but I think the expectation really from the team and from the fan base is he's going to be the starter. and he's going to play 60% of snaps.
I don't know who you're talking to. That is not my expectation. That is not a
That's what it
reasonable
should be, though.
expectation in my mind. For what he's paid, you look at the contract and the player and you say that.
Right,
But
sure.
where he's at in
Why
his
wouldn't I?
career, 35 years old, defensive end, what he does best, you put him in the situation where he's going to have a big enough impact to succeed. And I think the guys we've groomed to be in those positions are now defensive ends 1 and 2. And we know they like to rotate a lot. So I know Von Miller's going to get his. Realistically, it's going to be at least 10 snaps a game. But I think it needs to be an impactful pass rush situations where Von Miller can succeed, right? You want to see him, put him in situations where he can succeed, where he's most going to benefit the team. And that's where it is. And if, they're going to constantly rotate. So we'll see what happens, but it's not my expectation that he's going to be suddenly out there for, 3/4 of the plays or half the plays even.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, a guy like Von, hardworking guy, has been through it all, right? I think he'll be back. I think he'll be able to play more snaps than AJ Epinesa, and I'll leave it at that. All right, last one. Ready? This is the one I didn't show you.
Okay.
Is this roster the one to get the Bills over the playoff woes, right? You got to start thinking big picture here. Josh Allen, another year older. The Bills now lost, 3 divisional playoff games in a row. You look back at 2020, lost a championship game, got blown out in the championship game. And then the year before that, you lost a wild card. So now you have 5 years in a row, or 6 of the last 7 years where you've lost a playoff game. Is that 2020 championship game the peak of this entire story? These conversations need to happen at this point.
This is, right? And it's a legitimate question, but here's my answer. If your answer to this is negative, meaning I don't know, or I'm unsure, I don't think so, then get off the wagon. You know what I mean? Because this is what being a fan to me is, and being informed on this team is. Because if your answer is no, there's no way you can inform me that there's a reason for that. You can't just say, well, we lost to the Chiefs and we always lose to the Chiefs. And
that is true.
No, we are the goddamn better team than the Chiefs. And nobody can debate that. We were last year. We were 1 injured player away from beating them. And god dang, it sucks. Yes, we had worse luck. So will the Bills have better luck going into the playoffs? I hope so. Yes. The hope. This is the eternal question of hope, right? Yes. Is this roster good enough to get us over the hump? Is the real question.
Right.
And the undoubted answer to that is yes. We have all the talent in the world at every position. If those guys live up to what they can be, which is the expectation, then this is an absolute Super Bowl team and nobody's going to beat them, because we are only playing ourselves, right? You can only be as good as your talent level is. And if every player on this team lives up to what they can be, no team in the NFL is as good as this Buffalo Bills team. I don't care who you put out there. Go ahead, Pat Mahomes. Who the hell you got? Huh? You got 1 defensive end and 1 tight end. Our entire roster is better than theirs, up and down. Now, do they have
their division's way easier?
Oh my God, they're going to be handed it. Like I said, we've had this conversation. We're playing Kansas City in Kansas City in the playoffs because they're just being handed it. But that's okay, because they won't have that determination going in to the playoffs.
And I feel like the Chiefs, they didn't even really turn it on last year, right? It was just take what the defense gives you, don't turn the ball over, and play with defense. And that worked for them, right? It was just wild.
Be mediocre. Yeah, and get mediocre. Lucky. Again, get lucky. Why? Because they didn't have major injuries. The Bills had major injuries. Think about it. Week 4 or week 5, whatever it was, against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and you lose Matt Milano and Daquan Jones, your 2 best defensive players, and you still win the goddamn division, and you still make it through the playoffs. It's ridiculous that team alone, if you would have last year at this time, if you would have said, okay, you lose your 2 best offensive players to start the season after week 4, are the Bills going to be any good? Half of us would have hit the panic button right away.
Yeah.
Especially not knowing what Christian Benford and the,
right.
We're going to be, right? Like, you don't know what you're going to get out of them last year at this time. So that only raises the impact. I'm telling you, again, the defense, you can't tell me that our defense isn't better than Kansas City. Who are you going to put up against us?
Oh,
The Bengals, right? Okay.
Kansas City's defense is pretty good last year.
The Bengals have an electric offense. Great. Let's put them up against the Buffalo Bills right now. You want to say they're a better team than the Bills right now? No. Do you want their offense against our defense? Yes, the Bengals have played very well against the Bills defense. So that is something to be concerned about. But
Yeah.
I still will take the Bills defense if they play the way they can and if they're healthy against that Joe Burrow led and superstar offense of the Bengals.
Which
because
Joe Burrow coming back healthy as well.
Yes.
Right.
And this is the factor that I think is going to be at play this year, right? How do you beat a team that has the best offense like a Pat Mahomes or a Joe Burrow? You know how you beat them? You control the ball. You have the ball for possession. And how do you do that? You get guys who can catch the ball and make plays. You get first downs and you keep going with it, right? And the guys we have now, we're not airing it out down the field every play. You still have that ability if you need it, but we have a possession offense right now. We are going to run the ball and catch the ball, and that clock is going to tick, 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 tick every time the Bills have the ball. There's no more 2-minute offense for the Buffalo Bills. It does not exist. You are going to have the 20-minute offense for the Buffalo Bills. We're going to score a touchdown, and then you're going to get the ball. Maybe you score a touchdown, but guess what? We're going to score a touchdown, and the game is over because that's how it's going to happen. The time of possession this year, to me, the way this offense is built, time of possession is going to be a thing, and that is how you beat these teams that have good offenses.
Well,
your defense still has
sounds great, but let's go back to the Kansas City game again. 2 minutes remaining. You try for the end zone on 2 plays, miss the field goal. You had them, right? And you
did.
Possession offense, I love the idea, but the Bills Josh Allen's not that player. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but again, that was that team, and you're talking about Gabe Davis.
That was just a few months ago.
Correct, but now we have a completely different set of receivers.
Right. Which is why the question is number one. Because, again, we kind of knew that group from last year and years prior had a good core. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And they knew how to get to the playoffs. They knew how to win playoff games, won a ton of playoff games.
Correct.
Will this group of leaders, this group of guys have that, right? Remains to be seen.
We appreciate everything that team did for us, right? And those guys and all those veterans who left, everything they did will be appreciated and loved in Buffalo forever. But it didn't work. So the fact that we have something different, if anything, this question should say, be more optimistic about the Bills going over the hump, because we're not doing the same old thing and smashing our head against the concrete again. We're doing something different that is going to look different during the season and is going to play out different in the playoffs. And that is exactly the hope going forward. That's what I call this. The realistic hope of, yes, this is the team to get us over the hump because we have a new style of offense. We have more guys who can make plays. We have the best depth that Josh Allen has ever played with at the receiver position. And now this is going to be a productive offense. And you still have Sean McDermott on defense, and you're getting back all your best players on defense if they can stay healthy, if the depth pays off to be what it is. Even if guys only play to 3/4 of their capability, I think that the Bills are going to be, if not the favorite team going into the playoffs, they're going to exceed people's expectations going in. Again, I fully expect that the number 1 seed is going to be the Chiefs because they're going to be handed it. There's nothing the Bills can do to stop that. But
don't look at the Chiefs' schedule. It's not.
Oh my God!
I mean, it starts off tough. I think they will have Ravens, Bengals, Falcons, Chargers, and then it gets super easy. Late in the year, teams like the Broncos, Steelers, Chargers, Raiders, Panthers, Buccaneers. I mean, there's some tough ones in there, but I mean, relatively speaking, Chiefs should beat these teams.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, and it's getting historical, right? Losing 6 or 7 years. How many quarterbacks with Josh's, talent or capability have lost this many playoff games? I mean, Dan Marino comes to mind. Somebody in the chat mentioned Peyton Manning at 31. I mean, I remember the Colts went 8-0 every year for like 4 or 5 years and didn't win a Super Bowl. But the Bills are now in that conversation, right? Is Josh Allen's career going to be more like Dan Marino? or is he going to end up getting over the hump at some point? And
Yeah.
that if you lose the playoffs this year, that is now a big story, in my opinion. It already should be a big story. You know, so I
Certainly.
remember when Peyton Manning got to the Super Bowl, that was the biggest story through that whole time period of the postseason, right? Everyone's rooting for him. Everyone's happy for him because they've lost so many playoff games. That will be Josh now if he ever gets to the championship game.
Will 100% agree with you if the conditions are right. This loss that we had in the playoffs again was more frustrating than 13 seconds to me. 13 seconds, we made the mistake. We were boneheaded. We lost. Our coaches let us down. The call let us down. We lost the game. The game this year in the playoffs, we only lost because of bad luck. You couldn't keep injured guys on the field. You had no linebacker. You had no cornerbacks. You're playing with your last string of defense.
Kansas City ran all over them.
And they still only beat us by 3 points. Like,
yeah.
It was so frustrating.
Well, luck went your way too, right? Like, I think it was MVS fumble or Hardman fumble. The ball goes out the end zone. That's a luck play.
Before the ball was ever snapped, though, I'm saying that the Bills were at such a disadvantage. We were heartbroken going in, knowing that we're without the linebacker. We're playing with the guy we literally just pulled off the street. We're without our best cornerback. They're bound to at least make one boneheaded play that's going to give them a touchdown. And what are we going to do?
You got to find a way, right? And
you do, yes.
It's at home. You finally got Kansas City at home, which I think was an advantage. But again, once you saw him play, it was like not really an advantage at all.
Yeah, because of the injuries. So, context matters.
What's it come down to,
with you that if this team is healthy or at least mostly there, you're going to have injuries during the season.
Yeah, sure.
Like you
said, part of it.
So
Kansas City had
whoever's
injuries.
There, whoever isn't, exactly. But as long as it isn't like, oh, you've lost half of your starting defense, good luck going into the playoffs, playing these top tier teams. You're never going to be at an advantage there. Yeah. Your expectations are going to be dampened by that. But if going into the playoffs, this team is mostly healthy and they continue to lose to a Pat Mahomes or a Joe Burrow or insert other team here that you think is good enough to beat the Bills this year, then yes, you have a narrative that is continuing for the Bills.
Yeah, and it should be. But I still can't get over last year. 13 seconds I'll never get over. But last year, Kansas City slipped up and you had an opportunity to win.
Yes, they were the worst team.
And I don't know what happened, whether it's Josh, whatever. Part of me says it's McDermott in their head saying, let's win with defense. Just score the touchdown, win with defense, right? That worked in Kansas City during the regular season 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Right, with Taron Johnson picked off Pat Mahomes, right?
We have their number during the regular season.
But like when you have Kansas City inside the 30, right? Don't quote me on the yard line, but with 2 minutes left in a playoff game after you've lost to them 3 or 4 times in the playoffs, I just can't stomach it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So so we flip the roster now. Kansas City's been successful with that. What's the story with the Bills, right?
Yes, and just to be clear, if you lose to an inferior team, and I'm talking the Houston Texans, maybe they make it, the Jacksonville Jaguars, if they end up winning their division, those two teams have good rosters, but they should not, under any circumstances, beat the Bills in the playoffs. You are the team that has to prove it, not them. I don't care if they have the better record. I don't care if we're playing them at home. Either of those teams, I use them as examples because they're AFC South. I think either one of them could win, but insert any other team that isn't Chiefs or Bengals there, and you have a scenario. I say Bengals because they're the other ones who destroyed us.
No, I know. Yeah, they can't beat Cincinnati. Period. Period.
I think that's the team that I would least like to play in the play. I would rather play the Chiefs than the Bengals again because we've seen that play out.
And you could argue like luck has gone the Bills' way. I think what was it like? You drew the Bengals 2 years ago instead of the Chiefs. You had them at home. And again, worst game of the year, felt like. Obviously not the worst game of the year, but like that wasn't the same Bills that you saw in the regular season.
They beat our butts. Yeah.
It was embarrassing.
That was a gross game. That was the worst game we've ever seen in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think
but it's year after year after year,
But again, let's play this scenario.
It does feel like, can McDermott survive after this year?
Let's play this scenario. There would at least be discussions around that. I don't think that, to me, there's two different conversations there, and we're not going to hash this out on this show, but there's a conversation of should Sean McDermott be fired, which if he doesn't make the playoffs, you could make that argument all you want, and I'm not going to fight you. there is a should Sean McDermott be fired conversation to have if he loses in the playoffs with a healthy team.
Yeah.
Will he be fired is not a contest. No is the answer. This leadership, the ownership, they're not going to fire Sean McDermott. They're not going to fire Brandon Beane. No is the answer. There is 0% chance if the Bills make the playoffs, and as long as they live up to that expectation, there is 0% chance Sean McDermott gets fired. 0, 0, 0. So, I mean, should he? There's conversation around it. He can't get over the hump. Now, do I think he should? No. But will the conversation happen at the time if he loses? Absolutely. And again, you can insert. Let's do a different scenario. If, say, the Browns win their division, and the Ravens make the wild card, and the Bengals aren't even in the playoffs, just by being in a competitive division, right? That could very well happen this season.
Sure.
Nobody would dispute that. The Bills cannot lose to the Browns, even if the Browns are a better team on paper. You cannot lose to the Browns. The Browns do not have the playoff experience. The Browns do not have years of being in the situation and knowing what to do and being there and not living up to it. The Browns can afford to lose. The Bills cannot. So that is another scenario that I could see playing out where the Bills play a team like that in the playoffs, and it's like, I don't care who the better team is going in or what the line is for the game. Even if they're the favorites playing in at the Browns, you have to beat that team no matter.
Right. And then the Bills have proven they can definitely beat teams like that. It's really just like you said, Cincinnati, Kansas City, Baltimore worries me a little, but I do think the Bills are the favorite for the division. They're going to be right back there. They're going to have their opportunity at Kansas City or at Cincinnati, but you have to capitalize on it at some point. And I think the advantage right now sitting here in the offseason is you look around, Bills really don't have a lot of distractions, right? I mean, you had the Stephon Diggs stuff for a couple of years, and that's over now. That was quick. But then you look at Cincinnati, okay, we got T. Higgins holding out. What was he franchise tag, big contract dispute there. And you wonder how much longer can they hold it together, right? You just paid Joe Burrow. There's a lot of talent on that team. Joe Mixon now gone. Can they repeat? It's an extremely tough division there. And then Kansas City, they're doing the world tour for the third year in a row, right? Going to the White House again. You see them, the Taylor Swift stuff. Now they're, I think they're in Scotland doing something. It's just the world tour. Traditionally, NFL teams with success like that, just, getting back to the Super Bowl is harder. You know what I mean? Because there's so many outside distractions. I think New England was probably the best at avoiding that.
Well, and we didn't even get to the roster distractions of Kansas City.
Is Kansas City, what's their story? Are they going to be able to overcome sitting at the top for too long?
Well, that's what I think going into the playoff. I actually like this scenario better. The Chiefs had to grind through last season. They had the worst roster they've had in years. They grinded through the season. They had things go in their favor. The Broncos were a shitty team. The Chargers fell on their face as a franchise, which they have done repeatedly now. So they were given those gifts, right? Yeah. And they took advantage of them with the weak roster that they had.
Like the Patriots did for years.
Even this year, their roster is better, right? Their roster is better than last year's. Last year was
the division's worse.
And the division's worse.
It's the worst division in football. They're
still going to be handed it. So I think this year, unlike last year, when they had to endure and make it through and really fight for what they wanted, this year it's just going to be handed to them on a silver platter, and everybody's going to pick them to win, and everybody's going to pick them to go to the Super Bowl again, and they're going to be, the darlings of the NFL through the 18 weeks of the regular season. And I hope that happens. And I'm not going to complain when it happens, because the less that they struggle during the regular season, the more they will in the playoffs, in my mind. And, we play them, and we're going to get our chance again, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Again, that's one of their few challenges on their roster, on their schedule this year. And I think that we'll have the advantage of being much more worn in the season in our tough schedule going into the playoffs than Kansas City.
There's only two teams that can knock Kansas City out. It's Buffalo. Well, I think Buffalo's proven they can do it. They've made mistakes where it didn't happen. But in Joe Burrow, they've beat Kansas City, I think, twice in the playoffs, right? So, I mean, it's those two guys. You look around, I don't think Baltimore can, right? Just to keep pace with the amount of scoring that Kansas City puts up, right? I've seen them down 28 points and come back and win. It's just
sure.
It's
but
super hard to keep pace.
I would be interested to see like a true dynamic defense, maybe like the Browns last year. Obviously, we don't know that they're going to be that this year, but I would have loved to see, that dynamic Browns defense with a good enough offense. Obviously, last year they made it on the backs of that
Well,
defense.
I think you saw it with San Francisco, right, in the Super Bowl.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you saw it with San Francisco in the regular season versus Kansas City.
But they couldn't capitalize with the offense as well, right?
Yeah, Kansas City put up 40 on them in the regular season.
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, it's...
when you're playing Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid, it's too good. They're too good. They'll scheme something because Pat Mahomes, it feels like he kind of lost his ego. It's just win the game at this point.
Yeah.
And he continues to prove it, and somebody's got to knock him off. It's got to be the Bills if they really want to have a shot at giving Josh Allen a Super Bowl.
Do it.
Is this the year? Anyway.
Yes.
Fun show. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in the summer.
Get off the boat, because the answer is yes. We're good enough to get over that hump.
We'll be back next week, 7:30 Thursday night. Thanks for kicking it with us during the summertime. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing, so I appreciate you spending time with us.
Yeah.
Catch you next time.
Catch you next week. Thanks for kicking it with us.